Tonight, Ontario won't be mandating the COVID-19 vaccine for hospital workers.
Why is he almost always siding, quite frankly, with the anti-vaxxers?
The Ford government facing criticism for its decision, but argues mandating the vaccine would lead to the departure of thousands of healthcare workers. Plus,
this is a little bit of good news right now. I need some good medical news for people in my family.
millions of Ontarians will be able to book a COVID-19 booster shot starting this weekend. We'll tell you who's eligible. And Brady Robertson is found guilty of impaired driving in a crash that killed a Caledon mom and her 3 daughters. But those charges may not stick as his lawyers mount a constitutional challenge against drug-impaired driving laws. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. The Ontario government is facing criticism tonight after opting not to mandate healthcare workers be vaccinated against COVID-19. Premier Doug Ford says such a mandate could jeopardize the delivery of healthcare in the province. But as our Jessica Ng reports, some in the healthcare industry don't agree.
Premier Ford announcing in a release there will not be a province-wide vaccine mandate for hospital workers for now.
There would be some significant job losses if we were to proceed with mandatory vaccination right now, but we still support the decisions of individual hospitals to do as they see best.
Health Minister Christine Elliott says it's to avoid further delays and cancellations for surgeries being seen in other provinces.
In British Columbia, for example, they've had to cancel some of their scheduled surgeries because they've got about 3,300 workers that are out on leave now.
The provincial government maintains that frequent testing of hospital employees is working, with outbreaks in, quote, only 6 of Ontario's 141 hospital systems.
Both Ford and Elliott getting grilled on the numbers the decision was based on. Ford writing that a province-wide vaccine mandate would mean potentially losing tens of thousands of hospital workers. But at the University Health Network behind me, it meant that there were 158 individuals that no longer work across their systems as a result of their mandate.
That was a number that was based on the Premier's understanding of the situation before the letter was sent out.
But healthcare groups and workers worry about the impact of not having a provincial vaccine mandate. Dr. Michael Warner of Michael Garron Hospital tweeting, "This is a bad decision that will endanger patients."
Just imagine being a patient in primary care.
In July, the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario wrote an open letter to the Premier calling for a mandatory policy. It says it's disappointed by the announcement.
Healthcare workers are constantly on the front lines.
I have heard from nurses that they do not want to work anymore with unvaccinated colleagues. They don't want to. They are not willing to take the risk.
The Ontario Medical Association says it also wanted all healthcare workers to be vaccinated.
Physicians have been talking the talk, we've been walking the walk, we've been leading by example. We're going to continue to advocate for the vaccine.
The province said it will continue to monitor the situation going into the winter. Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario is expanding eligibility for booster doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, starting this Saturday, nearly 3 million Ontarians can book an appointment to get their booster shot. The government released its plan today, saying seniors age 70 and up and a number of other vulnerable groups need that extra protection from infection. Lorenda Redikob has more.
Lisa Christensen will soon be eligible for a booster shot.
This is a little bit of good news right now. I need some good medical news for people in my family.
She has 2 doses of AstraZeneca. We were there back in May when she got her 2nd dose. Earlier this week, she says her regular cancer follow-up came back irregular.
So they've found something else. So I'm kind of coping with that at the same time that I'm coping with an increase in my mother's dementia level.
Her mother, who lives with her, is 100 years old. She'll also be eligible for her booster. Along with people 70 plus and AstraZeneca recipients, frontline healthcare workers and Indigenous people can also receive a 3rd dose booster shot.
These additional groups will benefit from a booster dose as they are at increased risk of waning immunity and greater risk of exposure, serious illness, and outcomes.
People have to wait at least 6 months after their second dose for a booster. The chief medical officer says people with 2 doses of AstraZeneca are still protected, but at a 10 to 15% lower level than those with mRNA vaccines. The province is planning for others to get a third dose. That would likely happen sometime in 2022, all dependent on advice from the Federal Advisory Committee on Immunizations.
So we have seen slow and gradual fading immunity in some populations. In the general population, we're not seeing that at present, and hence I think we have time to reflect on the best science and the best timelines.
One infectious diseases expert isn't convinced healthcare workers need boosters, given that it appears immunity is still high.
We have to remember this is a medical intervention. There can be inflammatory complications, and we may need boosters down the road for different variants. So we might not want to be giving this vaccine too many extra times.
He thinks the doses are needed more elsewhere.
I think that if you take away from the highest risk groups, these vaccines should be going to other places so they can get their first doses in places like Africa, South America, and in Asia.
Lisa Christensen was planning to visit a restaurant indoors with her mom later this month, their first time during the pandemic, to celebrate her mom's 101st birthday. But with waning immunity, she's now reconsidering that. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario is taking 4 of its own members to court. It says it wants to get to the bottom of whether the 4 doctors were following provincial rules when it came to their vaccine exemptions. Greg Ross has more.
According to documents obtained by the CBC, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario launched an investigation last month into the practices of 4 doctors. According to the application to the Superior Court of Justice, the purpose of the investigation is to determine whether the respondent has committed an act of professional misconduct or is incompetent. Provincial regulations are very clear when it comes to COVID-19 vaccine exemptions.
One is a myocarditis or pericarditis after the vaccine that is causally established to be related to the vaccine. And the other one is a documented allergy against one of the ingredients of the vaccine.
Dr. Peter Uni is with the Ontario COVID-19 Science Advisory Table. He says these types of exemptions are very rare.
This would be perhaps roughly 1 in 25,000 on average in the province of Ontario.
The applications filed with the courts against Dr. Mary O'Connor, Dr. Mark Trozzi, Dr. Celeste Thrillwell, and Dr. Roshane Killian state that information obtained in the investigation to date includes copies of medical exemptions from COVID-19 vaccination completed by the respondent, which do not meet the requirements established by the Ministry of Health or guidance provided by the college's registrar. The college says the doctors are obstructing the investigation, and in the case of Dr. Thrillwell, the college says the respondent has stated through counsel that if college investigators attempt to obtain records from the respondent's office, it will be resisted physically by private security. Others in the medical industry say if the accusations are true, these doctors could be putting patients' lives in danger.
The misinformation that these colleagues of ours actually are spreading can cost and probably will cost lives if they haven't done so yet.
The college claims to have grounds for this investigation as the self-regulating body for the medical profession in the province, and that the 4 doctors in question are members of the college. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, it's been a chilly November so far. You know things are transitioning when you start hearing the word flurries.
Yeah, exactly. It is that time of year, Kelda. It was a cool start today. I mean, -3 for Oshawa and Muskoka, -1 in Hamilton. We started off at freezing at 0 for Pearson, and you know, we haven't been there since about mid-May. Yeah, that's right. It's been a while. So it takes just adjusting again. Daytime highs were on the cool side too. We should be close to about 9 degrees for a daytime high for this time of year, just to kind of fill you in there. Also, yeah, we had to talk about those flurries because of the lake effect. The waters of the lake still relatively warmer compared to the colder air passing over. So through tonight, even into tomorrow and into the afternoon, there's a chance, although the winds won't be as strong tomorrow, but there's a chance we could have just an isolated sprinkle or even a wet flurry make their way towards the GTA. So that risk is there. Otherwise, we will be seeing variable skies through the day. At times, a little more cloud cover in there. Overnight tonight, though, actually cooler than it was last night, -1. The winds, because they're lighter, it's not going to be much of a wind chill, but it may feel like about -3 by tomorrow morning. 8 degrees for the high as we get into tomorrow afternoon. And as for any warm up coming, I'll talk about that coming up.
All right. Thanks so much, Colette. Toronto police have released images of a suspect involved in a shooting last month. Now, on October 19th, police were called to a patio near Queen West and Portland for reports of gunshots around 2:50 a.m. Police say a fight broke out on a patio. A man dressed in red waved a gun and fired several shots into the air during the fight. There were no injuries. The suspect is described as around 6'2", with a muscular build, dark facial hair, and tattoos on his left arm. Police are asking anyone who recognizes him to contact them. Durham police are investigating a suspicious death of a 67-year-old woman at a home in Oshawa. Yesterday afternoon, police were called to Philip Murray Avenue near Park Road South. A young child returned home to find his grandmother dead. Anyone with information about this incident is also asked to contact police. And Toronto police have arrested a man accused in the killing of a man near Kennedy and Ellesmere last week. Gunshots were reported in that area early Friday morning. When police arrived, a man was found suffering multiple gunshot wounds with his dog by his side. The man was rushed to hospital where he died. He's been identified as 54-year-old Douglas Devlin. 41-year-old Adrian Williams has been charged with second-degree murder. Brady Robertson has been found guilty of impaired driving in a crash last year that killed Carolina Chisulo and her 3 young daughters. The 21-year-old had pleaded guilty to dangerous driving causing death, but not guilty to the impaired driving charges. And while the judge has now found him guilty, those charges could still be thrown out if Robertson's defense team wins a constitutional challenge. Ellie Chiasson reports.
21-year-old Brady Robertson had 8 times the legal limit of THC in his blood at the time of the fatal crash. That was enough for the judge to find him guilty of impaired driving. However, Justice Sandra Caponecchia has agreed to hear arguments for challenging that very law. The per se law, as it's known, is an offense of operating a vehicle with a concentration of alcohol or drugs in the body in excess of a specified threshold value. This case is about the drugs Robertson had in his system, specifically cannabis, and the per se law is set with a legal limit of 5 nanograms of THC per milliliter of blood. What the Crown failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that Robertson was actually impaired by the THC in his system. The toxicologist who have testified in this trial said chronic users walk around with higher THC levels in their system without being impaired. And impairment is extremely difficult to prove with just a number, especially as low as 5 nanograms. Today, the Crown's witness, an expert in addiction and pharmacology, even said, quote, "If you're smoking cannabis, at some point you will be above 5 nanograms. It's hard to smoke cannabis and not be above 5.
I don't want to say they pulled it out of thin air because I don't know that. One can safely say that it does not correlate with impairment.
Toronto DUI lawyer Alan Pierce says it can be hard to convict people under the drug-impaired driving laws for this very reason. And the legal limit was bound to be challenged at some point.
Everybody knew this was an unforced error on the part of the government on this particular point. And it's being correctly brought by what appears to be able counsel. So
Robertson's defense counsel did end strong, cross-examining the Crown substance abuse expert. Quote, "I could very well have a THC level of 6 nanograms after 6 hours, right?" The witness says, "It's possible, yes." "I would be guilty of breaking the per se law while sober?" The expert witness, "You would be guilty of breaking the per se law, yes." If this constitutional challenge succeeds, Brady's impaired driving charges could be dropped in this precedent-setting case. Ali Chiasson, CBC News.
Welcome back. Anyone who was looking for a home in the GTA in October was looking at a much smaller pool of available properties, according to the latest data. The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board says that resulted in fewer sales and a big increase in the price of properties that did sell. The board says just under 10,000 homes changed hands last month. That was down about 7% from October of 2020. The average price of a sold property soared by almost 20% to nearly $1.2 million in October. That's up from an average of about $970,000 in October of 2020. The iconic Toronto sign at Nathan Phillips Square is getting a brand new addition for Remembrance Day. The mayor unveiling today a poppy incorporated with the light up letters.
The poppy will be lit every evening starting tonight and throughout Remembrance Week, which officially begins this Friday through until November the 11th, Remembrance Day. I'm pleased to say it will return in years to come for future commemorations.
Mayor Tory revealed the poppy at an outdoor event with Royal Canadian Legion District Commander Gary Morgan as part of the city's Year of the Poppy project to mark 100 years since it was first used as a symbol for Remembrance Day in Canada. The poppy will continue to be used for future Remembrance Day commemorations by the city. And you're looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline tonight, mainly clear this evening with some cloudy periods overnight. Currently just 3 degrees in the city. Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your extended forecast. And Colette, another cold night, but you did hint at a bit of a warm-up coming our way.
Yes, I did drop that little tease in there, Kelda. So let's kind of walk you through what's going to be happening here. We still have a chance of seeing the odd wet flurry make its way towards the GTA, but more so it's along the shores of Lake Huron there. But it is another not only cool night, in most cases the temperature is slightly cooler than it was last night. The winds will be backing off though, and that's why we'll see less of a chance of getting into some of that mixed precipitation coming towards the GTA, but still chances there, especially towards the afternoon hours tomorrow, though it's slim. And that increase in temperatures, we are going to get into a drier pattern, so we'll get into more sunshine after tomorrow. And we will see, you got to be really patient. And it's very subtle, but we are going to be seeing each day kind of a slight climb in our temperatures as we head towards the weekend. So overnight tonight, we are still looking at some of that mixed precip there all along the shores into the snow belt, that 2 to 4 centimeters possible before those winds let up. And then it kind of breaks over, and that's when we could get into a few of those isolated little shots making their way towards the GTA. But have a look at what happens into Friday with high pressure in place and conditions looking like we'll have more sunshine, less cloud cover, so some improvement there, although the wind's likely to pick up again. Snowfall potential then, just looking at some of those amounts, a few spots locally could see a little bit of an enhanced amount, but otherwise things are not quite like they were with the slippery conditions and all those weather advisories from earlier in the day. Tonight, look at this, southwestern Ontario, Sarnia -5, London -4. Still a cool overnight for Windsor, but up to 9 degrees for tomorrow. There's your slim chance of even seeing some of this off of Lake Huron from Sarnia over towards London. And then tonight, Markham -4, Oshawa -4. It was I say -3, but Oshawa was -2.5 last night. Last night, Hamilton, you were -1, and look at this. So yeah, that's what I mean by slightly cooler. Tomorrow with those peaks at sun, I think it will be fairly pleasant when we aren't into any light precip coming through. And then for Friday, this is that gradual, I mean, it's basically a degree a day, but you see that increase. More importantly, that the overnight lows into the weekend come up above freezing and back towards about 4 and 5 degrees, Kelda.
Thanks so much, Colette. Finally tonight, a 23-year-old Toronto filmmaker is heading to the COP26 UN Climate Change Conference to gather material for her next project. It's for her second independent documentary called 1.5 Degrees of Peace, which combines her passions for peace and climate justice. We spoke with her about her inspiration and her advice for other young activists.
Hi, my name is Kasia Sequoia Slavner. I'm 23 years old. I'm a Gen Z documentary filmmaker, and I'm headed to COP this week.
Do you consider yourself a filmmaker or an activist or both?
I think that the word activist tends to be, it's kind of a loaded word. But to me, activism is just caring in action. What if I could go visit people making change in their own communities? Show the world that change is possible, no matter where you come from. When I was 14, I was sparked to start my journey as a filmmaker when I attended my very first UN Commission on the Status of Women. This was a gender equality conference that brought together people from all over the world, especially grassroots activists. Hearing their stories of the ways that they were trying to find solutions, it really inspired me to use this passion that I had for photography and visual storytelling.
Behind me, I've got my trusty backpack. This is what I'm going to be living out of for the next 6 months, so we'll see how it goes.
I don't know what sparked me to say, okay, I'm going to take a year out of school. That was kind of crazy for a 15, 16-year-old to imagine. We traveled through East Africa and Southeast Asia for 6 months after crowdsource funding diligently for months. When I say we, I mean myself and my mom, who I convinced to take the time off with me after, bugging her for a little while and showing her that I was, really serious about bringing these stories to life.
I'm on a mission to show just how closely connected peace and climate justice are. Wars, a lot of militarization are taking away budgets, but are also putting a lot of carbon emissions in the air.
Through stories of youth making positive change. So the concept for 1.5 degrees of peace is looking at the intrinsic links between peace and climate justice and how we can build bridges between these two movements. Because if we keep acting in silos, we're not going to be as, productive as we want to with progressive climate action. And so we need to focus on the young people who are working to bridge these movements, but are also, seeing the impacts of both climate change and conflicts in their own communities. The narrative around the climate crisis can be pretty doom and gloom, but what gives me hope is the power of young people who are so resilient, continuing to show up despite the challenges that we're constantly met with. And so there is reason to look for hope, and that's what I really want to accomplish through this film, is give people the courage to take action on these two issues, to see that it's not beyond us and it's not just in the hands of world leaders. We have power to make real change.
Incredible young woman. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.